Everybody. We are going to be learning about Native Americans of Indiana this week. The main group that you'll look at is the Miami Native Americans because they were found in Fort Wayne and the surrounding area. Waynedale specifically has a very strong Native American history. The Miami, as you'll find out with many of the Indiana tribes, were farmers and hunters. For this specific group, the males did the trapping and hunting while the females gathered any kinds of foods they could, planted food, and also made the clothing. Clothing was made from animal skins at that time because there was no factories. They lived in villages near rivers because rivers provided not only food and water, but great soil and a source of transportation. They lived in wigwams, which again is going to be something you see throughout the Indiana tribes because wigwams were made of wood with bark and things covering them. And their leaders were called chiefs. And off to the side there is Chief Little Turtle, who was in Fort Wayne area at that time, which used to be called Kikianga, which is where the middle school is named after. Kikianga was almost like a capital city because of the location. It was located on the three rivers, and so it was a great source of being able to travel and get with other tribes. After the harvest season, so they would start moving in the winter to try to hunt. The Potawatomi, there's a picture right there of the wigwam and a longhouse. So the Potawatomi lived in the northern part of Indiana near Lake Michigan. They used the great soil up there for farming, the rivers for fishing. They used the wigwams there for the spring into the fall season. So all the way through when it was colder because it was easier to keep warm with one family. They would have a fire in there. Whereas the longhouses were used in the summer. You can't see that underneath, but up to 7 families could stay in those longhouses, and there would be some space there for the smoke to leave, but it didn't worry. They didn't worry as much about the temperatures in the summer, so they were able to be in a larger space. The Lenape were forced out of their original home, which was actually in Delaware on the East Coast. They were done that by not only white settlers, but other Native American groups. As the white settlers came into the United States, they pushed the Native American groups more and more west. So then those Native American groups would fight with each other to try to claim land. They have 3 different clans, the wolf, the turtle, and the turkey tribes. And the men would marry outside their clan. The children would then become part of the mother's clan. Their large villages also had longhouses with multiple families living inside, and they would travel with smaller type of housing for the winter. Their chief was the leader there. The Shawnee were also forced to leave from the east. They farmed and hunted, and they instead had 6 clans within there. The children would then be part of the father's tribe, and unlike the other ones, the chief was not appointed. It was passed down from father to son. The Kickapoo resisted the European traders, unlike the others. So as European traders moved in, many Native American groups embraced them. We will find out later that that will become a problem. But they did not like that. So they did not trade very much with the settlers. They did hunt, fish, and farm, and they moved for hunting in the winter. This was a group that trained wild horses and then were able to use them, one of the first groups in the United States to do that. Trade was something that is going to be an important part of Native American history because it was positive because the settlers came in and they had a lot of goods that the Native Americans never had before, pots and pans and different types of tools and things that they could use. But the problem was once they did that trading, the European settlers then took advantage of those Native American people and they pushed them off of their lands. They also gave them weapons which they would fight against each other with. This was all the land that was lost by the Native Americans by the end of the 1800s. You can see there was no longer any part of Indiana that belonged to the Native Americans. These treaties, the treaties that they made were broken over and over again. So it wasn't really fair, but they didn't realize that's what was going to happen. The Europeans were much more powerful and kept moving them west. Today, Native Americans live in just those teeny tiny blue dots in the United States. Remember, they used to have all of that area, and now they do not. So they live in reservations, but they don't have to. But many choose to in order to preserve like their way of life and things like that. Several Native Americans live in poverty. 1 in 3, which is pretty high, are poor. As you can see in the picture here, some choose to wear traditional clothing while others choose to wear, clothing that you might see. But most